doing that which I was born to do. My name is Rush Limbaugh. I am America's real anchorman. I am the guy that drives the left insane. I'm the guy responsible for making them insane. I'm the guy responsible for infusing the left with an out-of-control, out of containment, even possibility of being contained hatred. And for that, my friends, I gave a gold star, and I take it proudly.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
You might say, what's Rush talking about? Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about here in just a second. And this could happen every day. I mean, I can talk about something like this happening every day because it happens every day. I just don't talk about it as often as it happens. Anyway, it's Open Line Friday. It's great to have you here as we wrap up another exciting, busy broadcast week on the one and only EIB network. Open Line Friday, as you now know, means that there are fewer restrictions on what callers can discuss. Have at it. Whatever is on your mind is fair game. 800-282-2882 is the number. So a friend of mine, Jay Nordlinger, who is a prominent writer and editor at National Review, sends me an email this morning. And he's just feeling sick to his stomach. He happened to be at Avery Fisher Hall last night, Lincoln Center in New York. He went to hear a concert by a noted classical composer named John Adams, who I've never heard. You know what? I ought to actually print this out and read it rather than paraphrase it, and I didn't think of that, and now... Well, I'll paraphrase it first, and then when I get to a break, I'll print it out. I wasn't even going to mention this. I don't know what caused me to bring it up now, but I'm going to mention it since I'm committed to it. So anyway, the note came from Jack Fowler at National Review, who informed me of a post on the corner blog at National Review that Jay Nordlinger posted last night about 11 o'clock. And essentially what Jay said, and this is the paraphrase, he'd gone to Avery Fisher Hall to enjoy a concert, some new composer, composer named John Adams. Classical composer, and this was a symphony for violin and some such movement, whatever. And the composer decided to take to the microphone and explain to the audience, it's a black tie audience, Avery Fisher Hall, what it was that inspired this particular symphony or piece or movement that he was performing, conducting, whatever he was doing last night. And he said he had been in Paris in Europe, and he was reading Arabian Nights, and he was reading other tracts, and he was just stunned when he found out all of the discrimination and hatred and mistreatment of women in the Arab world. And then he paused and said, you can find that here on Rush Limbaugh. And he said what happened next sickened him. The audience at Avery Fisher Hall applauded for nearly 2 minutes. The composer referencing me as no different than militant Islamists in their treatment for women. It made him sick. It reminded him of Orwell writing in 1984 of the 2-minute hate. And he said this applause went on not for 2 minutes, but it was sustained, and it made him sick because it literally so off the wall, it was ridiculous that here we had a composer who Jay happens to admire. I have since delved into this guy, and I found out that not a whole lot of people do. But Jay happens to admire his work and is going to review it later, and he's sitting there, obviously one of the few conservatives and maybe only conservative in this audience at Avery Fisher Hall. He said it just sickened him to see these ignoramuses, my word, start applauding the reference to me as no different than militant Islamists in terms of how women are treated and so forth. He just said it made him sick. And he then went on to castigate the composer and said some nice things about me. Here it is. Let me read to you exactly as Jay wrote the piece. Tonight, the New York Philharmonic, that's what it was. The New York Philharmonic premiered a work by John Adams. Adams, probably the most famous and important composer in the world, classical composer. His new work is Scheherazade, Number 2, a dramatic symphony for violin and orchestra. And before the performance, Adams himself took a microphone and spoke to the audience about the work that he described and how it came about. He had seen an exhibition in Paris about Scheherazade, and then he read Arabian Nights, and he was appalled by the casual brutality towards women depicted therein. At the same time, he was reading of the brutality toward women around the world in Egypt, Afghanistan, and India, for example. But we were not to think we Americans were exempt from this brutality against women. For example, you can find it on Rush Limbaugh. To this remark, the audience responded with sustained and robust applause. In 1984, Orwell writes of the 2-minute hate. The applause in Avery Fisher Hall did not last for 2 minutes, but it went on long enough. And then Jay goes on to describe how it sickened him and so forth. And it was classic. It's another example of just the mention of my name sends these people into orbit. And he makes the point, quite obviously true, that probably nobody in that audience has ever taken the time to listen to this program. I am the official bogeyman of the left. And so we had a little email back and forth today, and I told him, I said, no, this stuff, I long ago ceased being bothered by this. In fact, I've had to learn how to take this as a measure and sign of success. And it clearly is. So anyway, that's what I was talking about, the opening of the program being the one who inspires the most hate among people on the left who are already engaged in hate.